Thank you all. Take care. Converge. Oh, it's amazing.
Hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me. So I'm working on a BANE set. This is from May 26, 2001 in College Park, Maryland. This was filmed by Austin Stemper. He's a guitarist of Free. He was in Mindset. He was also in Have Heart. Easy to recognize if you see any of the, well, I guess Free is the only band you can see now. Redhead guy. Austin filmed the set, so he sent me a bunch of tapes. It was, this show was, I'll tell you what the show was. This show that he sent me was May 26, 2001 at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in College Park, Maryland. It was American Nightmare, Fairweather, Hope Conspiracy, Strider, Bane, and Converge. So he actually only sent me, so the tape that he sent me only contained American Nightmare, HopeCon, Bane, and Converge. So unfortunately there's no footage of the Strider or Fairweather. So that was the first tape he sent me, or first set of tapes. The other set of tapes he sent me was from July 6th, 2001. At the Falls Church VFW Hall in Falls Church, Maryland, or sorry, Falls Church, Virginia. That show was American Nightmare, Kill Your Idols, Time Flies, Panic, and Worn Thin. He only sent me footage for American Nightmare, Kill Your Idols, and Time Flies, so that's what we're working on. I don't know if they're all full sets. I feel like he only recorded, for some of them, it seems like he recorded most of the sets, and some of them only a couple songs here and there. So we're working with what we can. You'll notice this big congratulations thing in the center of the bottom part of the screen. I think so. Austin warned me when he sent me the tapes. He said to not judge him for doing anything stupid while he was young. So I think what happened was while he was filming, he pressed a button. So if you've never used one of these old school cameras, there was basically you could add in title screens, and there was a button where you could just toggle them on and off. So I think what happened was he likely accidentally toggled it on and left it on during the recording. So I'm just gonna leave it in there because if I start chopping it out, then it's gonna crop out too much of the video. It's a little less than it's about a little less than 1/3 of the video frame. So if I stretch it out to remove it, it's gonna be a little too weird. So I'm gonna leave it in there. It's just gonna be an artifact of how it was recorded, and that's just how it's gonna be. All I've done so far is I've duplicated the channels. So if you tuned into the live stream like right when I went on, you noticed that it was only coming out of the left channel. So what I did was I duplicated the channels, duplicated and swapped the channels. So now we're getting out of both left and right. It's a hack. It's a way of turning a mono signal into stereo. So I've done that, and right now I'm doing some very basic color correction. I've basically just warmed up the video very slightly. I've deinterlaced it, and I'm going to just apply a little bit of sharpening. And beyond that, I think I don't want to do too much else to modify it. As always, these live streams are interactive, so if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the chat, and I will try to respond to them when I can. So I don't expect this to take too long, again, because I'm doing very little editing here. What I'm doing right now is just applying a little bit of sharpening just to, with these old cameras, I've basically stretched out the video. So I'll show you what the original video looked like. Give me 1 second. Here, I'll do it like this. So all of my videos are exported as 720p. Eventually they'll be 1080, but right now they're all 720. But here's what the video looks like fit into a 720 frame. It's tiny. And that's because he shot it at, I think 480. Yeah, he shot it 720 by 480, and I'm putting it in a 1280 by 720 frame. So it's much smaller. So what I have to do is basically stretch it out to fill in the frame. So what ends up happening is you're taking something with a little bit of detail and putting it into, you're stretching it into something that requires much more detail. And so it's going to look naturally like blocky and not that great. This is actually not that bad, and I think it's because the show was pretty well lit. I don't think he had any sort of gain set too high, so it actually doesn't look that bad. So that's where I'm at right here. What I'm trying to do now is, like I said, apply a little bit of sharpening. Sharpening will obviously just sharpen up some of the detail, but you don't want to go too high because then it starts adding a lot of, like, let me zoom in. It starts adding a lot of this weird, just these artifacts here. If you look at his chin, if you look at like Dahlback's chin or his eyes, it becomes very, very blocky. So you don't want to go too high. I want to add just a little bit in this case, like maybe something around like 50. Even 50 is adding a little bit of, if you look at Bedard's shirt, you can see a little bit of those artifacts popping up at around 50. So I might just go around to like 25. Just split the difference. That doesn't look that bad. I mean, the untrained, it's not going to be that noticeable either way, but I'm probably just going to leave it in there. Yeah, someone noted the dreads, Zach's dreads, which is kind of crazy. That was definitely a thing back then. Dreads and big ass jeans. So if you watched, I was editing a Hatebreed and Cave-In and Shahulud set the other day from '99, and it was very similar. You can see huge pants. Matt is asking if I've recorded any of the shows or do I get the footage from other people. So the vast majority of the stuff on the site is stuff that I've shot. So I've always accepted tapes from other people, but it's only been very recently where I've started to do a lot more tape conversions. So if you don't know, so at the beginning of every video, there's a title screen. I'll show you what that looks like. So if the video you're watching starts off like this, the following footage was filmed by so-and-so and provided to hate5six for digitation, restoration, and online preservation. Obviously, that's a tape that I did not film, and that was sent to me by someone else. So every video that was not filmed by me starts off with this disclaimer, just to make it clear that it is not something that I filmed and that it is part of a tape restoration project. So when in doubt, just watch the beginning of the video and that'll tell you. But I would say like pretty much almost everything, upwards of 95, 90, maybe even 98% of the stuff on the site is stuff that I filmed. So I'm being asked, I don't know how to say your name, Vuana Vako is asking me to come to Finland to shoot an agnostic front set. That's the thing. I really want to start traveling more. So if you haven't heard, and I feel, I mean, I'm plugging it, but at the bottom there's a Patreon link, patreon.com/hate5six. I'm trying to do this site full time. For the last 10 years, it's been basically a side project that I've done outside of my work, outside of my 9-to-5 job. So what I'm hoping to do is if my Patreon is successful, then I will be able to actually travel to places. So if someone says, hey, come to Finland and shoot this fest, I will fly out to do it. But in order to do that, I need my Patreon to be a little more successful. I have just under 500 people subscribing, and I need a lot more than that to be able to do it. So what I'm hoping for in a couple months, if in a couple months this is taking off, and I'm basically able to live off my Patreon, then I will be much more willing to literally fly out to different parts of the world to film shows, wherever people want me to go. So if you're able to donate $2, $5, $10 a month, whatever it is, whatever you're comfortable donating per month, please, any amount will help me get to that point. Where am I from? I am from New Jersey. I grew up in a small town called Marlton, which is just outside of Philadelphia. Pretty much born and raised there. I'm living in Philly now, so that's where I'm at. Am I going to be at This Is Hardcore? Yes, I will be at This Is Hardcore. I basically have been in charge of all the video for This Is Hardcore since 2009. So this is my 10th year filming. So I will be there doing my thing for sure. Is Car Bomb a band that qualifies to be on the channel? To be honest, I have not heard Car Bomb, so I can't tell you. But also, to be clear, I will film any band. I'm not exclusively hardcore and punk. Like if you look on the site, which I'll show you here, so I mean I have stuff from Chairlift was a non-hardcore band that I filmed. So I mean there's a lot of crazy stuff if you really dig into it. This was a band that had like a song on an Apple commercial, like really good, like electronic indie rock, I guess you want to call it that. So there's Chairlift. There's another band that I really liked at the time called Hello Darlin'. It's like a ukulele, again, indie rock band, which I thought was really good. There's also some hip hop. There's like a Cannibal Ox set. If you know Cannibal Ox, they were on Def Jux in the early 2000s, produced by LP. Currently at Run the Jewels. There's a Def Jux set. From the same show, I filmed a bunch of other hip-hop artists. Crimson Gods, Carl Kevorkian, Please. There's a non-fiction set, I think. If you're not familiar with underground hip-hop, I highly suggest learning about non-fiction and the Arsonists. So there's a non-fiction set. I don't know who else played the show. I'll tell you right now. King Size and Outer Space. So I guess to answer your question, I will film anything. Oh, okay. Car Bomb is mathcore, hardcore, whatever, solid stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I will literally film anything as long as my schedule permits and I can make it there, and I'm asked to shoot it, I will. My dream band to film, that's a very hard question. I would really like to film, like, I feel like Fugazi would be a band that I mean, they've always been a band that I've wanted to see and also film. People always expect me to say like Rage Against the Machine or Inside Out, and like that's true, but I would also want to be like moshing and going off of those bands. So I don't know if I could actually survive filming them. Let's see. Cool. Lorna Shore. I've heard of Lorna Shore. I have not heard them or seen them, so definitely keep them in mind. All right, so what I'm going to do, I think I'm pretty much done this set. I'm going to kill my mic and just finish this off. And then I'm going to move on to either Converge or Hope Conspiracy, and then we're going to work on those next.
you all, take care. Thank you all, take care.
All right, so that's it for the Bane set. Pretty quick. So what I'm doing now is basically gonna queue it up for export. So what I like to do is I like to edit a bunch of sets in a row, and then I queue them up for rendering, and then basically I let that run for a couple hours. So cool. This is only going to be about 1.4 gigs, which is cool. I recently upgraded my Vimeo account so I can actually upload a lot more than I was before. So let's queue that up. So yeah, old wounds I've actually filmed. If you go on the site, I have 2 old wound sets from 2014 and 2015. So it's actually been a while. I thought they broke up, and I guess they're back together. I don't know if they have a new singer or if Kevin's back on vocals. I don't really know. Yeah, Premiere. It took me a while to learn Premiere. I mean, I'm not an expert at it, but I've basically been using it for like 10 years, so I feel pretty comfortable with it at this point. Cool, so let's close this, and we're gonna pick the next one. Let's do Converge. Fuck it. So here's, again, it's going to be the same issue where yeah, so it's the same issue where it needs to be resized. So I think the, I wrote it down. I want to increase the scale by 302%. There we go. And then I want to slide it down by, there we go. Cool. All right, so I have the audio muted, so you are intentionally not hearing anything right now. Oh shit, this is when Dahlbeck was in the band. Okay. This is some really old Converge. Well, depending on how long you've been watching the band. I've been filming shows. I first started filming shows in 2000. 2000 and 2001 I started filming shows, and then I stopped for a couple years. And then 2006 I got back into it. And then fall of 2008 I started hate5six.com. So it was early 2000s, then I took a break, and then I came back. and one of the reasons I came back, well, one of the reasons I stopped was there was no way to share video. YouTube didn't exist. I didn't have a way to put my work out anywhere. So what I did was I just sat on tapes, and then by 2006, YouTube was becoming a thing. So I started filming late 2006, early 2007, and then I was able to finally put stuff online. And then by 2008, things started taking off from there. So it was really a time and place kind of thing. So I'll play for you what the tape sounds like before I switch before I swap the audio, and you'll hear that it's literally just one channel. And then what I'll do is I'll swap the channel just so it evens it out into both.
So, yeah, this is really loud. You should turn the shit down, by the way.
So one of the things, I mean, there's really a limit to what I can do to clean up this audio. Again, it was filmed with a really old camera, not meant to be shooting really loud shows. So the audio is going to be blown out, and there's nothing I can do to make it sound perfect. But what I did do is I did a little bit of EQ adjustment. So if you're looking here on the screen, this is something called parametric equalization. So it's a parametric equalizer is what it's called. So it allows you to adjust the amplitude of different frequencies. So on the right-hand side, you have the higher end, so things like, cymbals and vocals and crowd, ambient stuff. Low end is like, obviously the bass and kick drum and things like that, and you have the mids, which is everything else. So for a recording like this, which is really blown out and very bass heavy, I'm actually pulling down the low end just a little bit, and what that ends up doing is it removes a little bit of that crunchy, bassy sound, and if I elevate a little bit of the some of the high end, it sort of mitigates the effect of the poor recording. I pull down the highs a little bit here because naturally there's going to be some like high end hissing from just the nature of the tape. So that is a way of just combating some of that. Again, full disclosure, I make this every time. I am not an audio engineer, so I'm sure that there are things that I'm doing that are not standard. But again, this is what I find that seems to work for me. So that's essentially all that I'm doing with this. I mean, for other videos, I spend a lot more time. For my own videos, that if it's not a soundboard recording for a show, I spend a lot of time on the EQ, and I apply compression and do mastering and do all that sort of stuff. So if you've never watched one of these live streams before, you can see them, they're archived in the channel. If you really want to watch me go through some more detailed EQ, you can check it out there. I have not seen Kubla Khan yet. Someone else is asking me that, so they are on my list of bands to shoot. But no, I have not shot them yet. So, actually, let me check one. I may have made one mistake with the BANE set, which I'm just going to check now real quick. No, I'm good. Okay. So, all right, what I'll do is I'll play a little bit more of the Converge set just so you can hear it. Again, it's not great, but it's a little bit better than it is originally. All right, so that's kind of what I'm working with. Yeah, so it's not, I mean, the thing is, I want the video to retain like what it was like to be there. So I'm sure obviously it was fucking loud. And so I don't want to lose that. I'm trying to preserve as much of what the show is like as I can without compromising that. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There are other things that you could do if I was producing this for some sort of like high-end DVD or something. There's a lot more you can do. There's other packages. There's a program called, I don't know if I have it on here, Isotope RX you could use. So Isotope, I'll show you kind of what it looks like. Let's see. It's taking a minute. It's basically extracting the audio from the video file. And I'll show you what it's actually doing. Cool. So this is what Isotope RX looks like. It basically imports the audio signal as this spectral graph. If you're not familiar with audio recordings, there's different ways of viewing audio. So here's a waveform. So this is just basically amplitude versus time. So these spikes are basically how loud it is at that time. So here it's like pretty quiet, and then it gets kind of loud right here, for example. Another way to view audio is looking at a spectrogram. A spectrogram is basically a way of viewing, instead of amplitude versus time, frequency versus time. Well, frequency and amplitude. So here you have on the y-axis is your frequencies, and the intensity, basically the amplitude is the brightness. So you can see that as someone noticed, the bass is really fuzzy. So what we're seeing here is, I mean, that's just showing up because the low end is very, very intense. There's it's very bright here on the low end, so the low end is definitely overpowering everything else. So, I mean, I'm not an expert on using Isotope, but Isotope will let you do things like, you know, if there's clipping or different types of crackling or hums, like a lot for certain tape formats, you'll hear like a hum in the recording, so you can actually remove that. So Isotope's really powerful. I'm not an expert on it, so I'm not always able to get the best sort of sound out of it. And again, this is just, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a video that's just going up online to be viewed by people maybe once, twice. I don't know how many people are going to watch this. I'd like to think people watch it a bunch, but you never know. But again, if this was something that I knew that was going to be watched a ton of times, I would probably be using Isotope to clean it up. So I used Isotope a couple weeks back to clean up a cave-in set. And again, that was after Caleb passed away, and I knew people were going to be watching that, so I spent a little bit more time cleaning that one up. I don't know if that video is on an archived YouTube live stream. It might be. You can check. But maybe at some point in the future, I'll find an excuse to go through Isotope RX a little bit more. But again, if you're interested in audio stuff, this is a very powerful tool. So it's cool. Let's wrap this one up, and then we'll move on to HopeCon.
the dude setting up the camera. If you have any complaints about equal vision at all, just talk to that dude. So, just the dude setting up the camera. If you have any complaints about equal vision at all, just talk to that dude. So, yeah, this is really loud. You should turn the shit down, by the way. And, yeah, we're Converge. Thanks for sticking around. We truly appreciate it. Let's have a good fucking time. Give me about 30 seconds to adjust his vocal level, and we'll be ready to go. Yeah, so, let's fucking Kirk Heights. Have a good one. Lights? Anyone? We need dramatic lighting here. Come on. Come on, I look better in dark light. Seriously. And right side, check it out. Check it out. Alright, fuck it. Let's just go outside and finish. We're all old friends here. Alright, fuck it. Let's just go outside and finish. We're all old friends. Check it out. Look better in dark light. Seriously. And right side, check it out. Check it out. Alright, fuck it.
Ian's asking me how the similar band graph works. I'll explain that in a second. So if you're not give me 1 second, and I'll walk you guys through that.
Check it out. Check it out. All right, fuck it. Let's just go outside and finish. We're all old friends here.
Cool. So that's it for the Converge set. So what I'm doing again, just adding this to my render queue, and then we'll work on Hope Conspiracy. So cool. That's added now, and then we will open up HopeCon. All right. So I don't know if Ian's still watching, but I will try to explain very quickly how the adjacency graph works. So if you're not familiar, this is an app that I built a couple years ago. It's on the site. If you just go to, I'll put the link in the chat. It's hate5six.com/adjacency. So if you type in a band, so currently there are 37, so this is outdated. This should be closer to 200,000, but right now it's 37,000. you can basically type in any of these 37,000 bands, and what it'll pull up is a web of all the bands that are related to them. So here we typed in Converge, and we can get a sense of what are the bands that are related to them. So we have Dillinger Escape Plan, Oathbreaker, Botch, Birds and Row, Chariot, Trap Them. And then we can go to bands like Dillinger Escape Plan, or that's not a good example. We can go to a band like Birds and Row and see that they're similar to Oathbreaker and Code Orange Kids and Loma Prieta and Alpinist. So what this is basically a general graph representing the neighborhood of bands that are related. How this works is, what I did was basically, if you go to Last.fm, Last.fm is, if you're not familiar, Last.fm is a site that tracks what people listen to. So Last.fm will list basically similar artists here. So what I did was I wrote some software that basically pulled the data from Last.fm. So for Converge, it pulled out Dillinger Escape Plan, Botch, All Pigs Must Die, Chariot, Norma Jean, Nails. And so what I do is for every band, I look up what are the bands that are similar to them, and then for each of these similar bands, what are the bands similar to those bands? So it's called a two-hop network because I'm hopping from, for example, Converge to Dillinger Escape Plan, and then Dillinger Escape Plan, I can then look up what are their similar bands. So again, someone mentioned Car Bomb. So HopeCon is similar to Car Bomb, for example. So what we should see here is if we type in Hope Conspiracy, we might see Car Bomb. No, so this might be out of date. So we don't actually see Car Bomb on here, but you get the idea. Basically, I'm using Last.fm to create a graph that shows what bands are similar and what bands are similar to those similar bands. So basically, like the rough neighborhood of bands that are tied together. And so if there is an edge drawn between two bands, it means they're very similar. If you look closely here, some of these edges are darker than others. Some of these are super dark. Some of them are light. All that means is that the similarity is stronger. So here, for example, you see that Hope Conspiracy is much more similar to Suicide File than they are to Give Up the Ghost. So again, this is based off of aggregate listening habits. That's how Last.fm works, is they track what hundreds of thousands of people listen to, and they compute basically similarity based off of that. I'll take this moment to plug. So that system is pretty old. I built that a couple years ago. This is a new system that I built. It's called Sage. Sage is a way of telling you what, based off of what bands you do like and don't like, Sage will recommend other bands to you. So let's say if you like Converge, you can tell Sage, I like Converge, and you press search, and this will give up a list of bands that are similar to Converge. This does use Last.fm, but it does it in a much smarter way. So you can say, I like Converge, but I don't like let's say you don't like, I don't know, Nails or something. So what this does, it readjusts its recommendations based off of what you don't like. So a better example to show you, I actually like this example a lot. If you search for Kid Rock, you're going to get a lot of like metal, you'll get some country rock, you'll get some rap rock, POD, Prophets of Rage, you'll see Rage Against the Machine. You'll get some, a mix of what Kid Rock used to be. But if you say that I like Kid Rock, but I don't like DMX, or if you say you don't like any sort of hip hop artist, what it does, it readjusts its recommendations. So now it's only recommending to you bands that are more rock heavy or more country, and it's not giving you any of the rap rock recommendations anymore. So Sage is a way to allow you to basically interpret things that you do and don't like, and it'll readjust its recommendations based off of that. So another example is if you like, what was the example? Let me look it up real quick. Okay, yeah. So if you like Inside Out, you'll get things like Turning Point, Floor Punch. You'll get like the typical 80s hardcore, some leaning more towards straight edge hardcore or whatever. Youth of Today, like this stuff makes sense. If you say you also like Prima, so for those of you who don't know, Prima was a band. There were young kids in the mid 90s. They must have been like 14 or 15. They were Hare Krishnas, and they were basically a Shelter and 108 ripoff band. Not ripoff, but worship band, I should say. So if you say you like Inside Out and Prima, you actually get 108 as a recommendation. That's kind of cool because if you don't know the history, Vic left Inside Out to join Shelter, and then he left Shelter to join Inside Out. So what this is saying is, if you like Inside Out with a little bit of Krishna, you get 108, and I think that's actually kind of cool. If you want to read more about how Sage works, if you just go to the top here, I'll link the app in the chat. If you click this link here, Artificially Intelligent, this is a blog post that I wrote that talks about how adjacency works, and it talks about how Sage works. So this is a project that I worked on. If you're really interested in like the math and the computer science aspect behind how these things work, I definitely recommend reading this. This was a lyric analysis that I did on bands. So this was basically just so it's all clear, this is all free. All of these tools are 100% free on the site. This is an analysis that I did that was analyzing band lyric similarity. Again, this is all automated. So if you read the post, you can read more about this. But basically, I analyzed band similarity based off of how similar their lyrics are, based off of lyrical themes. So this is all in here. If you really want to dig into it, I wrote this. This assumes you have no experience with any math or computer science, but so if you're interested in it from a non-technical perspective, you can read this, and it's very accessible. It sort of eases you into the more technical stuff. So my sense is that based off of what people have said is they've read this and they've actually come away learning a little bit more about like how AI works. So if you're really interested in AI and how it's applied to band recommendations, I highly recommend reading this blog post that I have. And this will walk you through how I created these systems. So there you go. I might do like a dedicated live stream one of these days just to dig into this a lot more, but yeah, I'd like to do that at some point. But take a look at this. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting stuff. With that said, let's get cracking on this Hope concept. So what we got to do is have to import these files, and again, we're gonna have to resize it. To 302 1. Oh, I may have made a mistake in the Converge set. It's funny, I always forget to do one little thing, and then I got to go back and fix it. So let me just do that real quick. All right, this is the Converge set, field options. What I forgot to do is I basically want to apply de-interlacing. So let me de-interlace that. And then we can go back here. I'm going to remove it from the queue and then just basically re-add it now. De-interlacing is important because otherwise you'll get like vertical or horizontal lines. I don't want to go into how interlacing works right now, but basically if you look up interlacing, you'll have a better sense of how video works. There's it's basically lines of images that basically flash on the screen. And if you don't have a de-interlace, if you don't have a monitor that uses interlacing, then you're going to get a lot of like jagged edges. So de-interlacing is a way to mitigate that. So what I've done is basically I told it to de-interlace, and so now it's ready to go. So now if we go back to the Hope concept, we can do the same thing there. So just right click, go to field options and always deinterlace, and then we're good to go. I need to, so I've duplicated the audio channels. I need to swap it, and now we're good. So drop that in, and again, I basically saved the presets that I used for American Nightmare, and I'm just going to apply them here. That'll save me. I basically don't have to redo any of the EQ or color correction stuff. I'm basically using the same template. Cool. So if you were listening, this is really not a great recording. The set is significantly worse than the others. It's very like rumbly, low end rumbly. I don't know what changed. I mean, it's the same show, same venue. It might just be the nature of the tape, or I don't know. So unfortunately, this is kind of where we're at, which sucks because HopeCon is one of my favorite bands, and I really wish that this was a better sounding set. But it's better than nothing. I will take any live footage that I can get at this point of my favorite bands. So I think that's basically it. I'm going to queue this up, and then we're pretty much done. It's going to take a little bit of time to render them, but once they're rendered, I will add them to the release queue. And if you don't know, yeah, that's how it works. I'm going to hop off here. Basically, in about 15 minutes, I'm releasing something pretty exciting. There's only 6 people watching, so I'll give you guys a sneak peek because you're the diehards. But basically, in 15 minutes, if you go on hate5six, I'm releasing a let's see, hour and 45-minute documentary on the Chicago hardcore scene. This is directed by my friend Steven back in 2000. He spent close to 10 years working on it, but it was released. He premiered it in 2016, and he asked me to basically host the online premiere. So he might shop it around to Netflix, I don't know, but basically he's giving me first dibs at hosting it. So that'll be up on the site in about 15 minutes. I got to hop off now and get that ready, but basically you should check it out. It's a really good documentary about the history of the Chicago hardcore scene. From the 80s to early 2000s, there's rare footage of like Harm's Way and Los Crudos and Charles Bronson and interviews and everything. It's really good. So check it out. So that'll be up in about 15 minutes or so. But again, that's it. I basically just wanted to edit these 3 sets on the stream, and looks like we got them done. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't hit subscribe, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to do these live streams pretty regularly. And yeah, make sure you check the site. I basically post new videos every day. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again soon.